Hello, welcome to PlayStation Access. My name's Nathan and I'm here with Rob.
Hello.
Rob, I'm here to talk to you about Nioh 2.
Excellent. A game I would love to play, but probably won't.
Have you ever played it?
I have tried Nioh. I got my ass kicked so bad, and as I always do, I gave up.
You are perfect for this video, Rob, because it is 9 tips for Nioh 2 beginners.
Right.
And
I am definitely a beginner.
It will cover some of the stuff that was important for the first game, but then it will go on to talk about stuff which is new for Nioh 2. So do hang around if you just need a refresher or you want to know what's new in Nioh 2.
And Nathan knows what he's talking about. You platinumed Nioh, the first one.
I platinumed it, forgot all about it, and then had to relearn it for this video.
Right.
That's basically how it's gone. So this is really basic stuff. The game gets much more complicated. We're going to start with number 1, which is just weapons.
Okay.
There are lots of different weapons. So the first thing you want to do when you're in because there's character customization this time, you're going to pick yourself 2 weapons because you can switch between your weapons in Nioh. So think about them complementing each other. You probably want one powerful weapon and one quite quick weapon.
Yes.
You can have dual hatchets this time. That's what I've been using. I used the Kusarigama in the last game. Been using the dual hatchets. And just watch out for the fact that whatever weapons you choose, they are going to scale with a particular skill.
Okay.
Which means that and it will tell you, the game will say, hey, if you like these hatchets, your friend is skill. It is literally, my one is skill.
Right.
And others might be strength or constitution or courage.
Do you get ranged weapons?
You can get ranged weapons. Yeah, they come. You can also have 2 ranged weapons on there.
So I could just hide and shoot people from far away.
Ranged weapons are more of a bonus. You don't pick them as part of your core build.
Okay.
So what I want people to take away from number 1, weapons, is think about your choice, think about the combination of them together, and then just watch out for that stat. And then when you're leveling yourself up, make sure you put some points into that stat.
Cool. I'll do lots of thinking about my weapons.
Good.
And then die.
One of the things that will help you to stop dying, number 2, is Ki, which is basically the Nioh game's form of stamina. So you've seen that underneath your health bar there's a green bar. Dodging, sprinting and blocking or doing moves will deplete this bar.
Yeah.
Fairly simple. One of the things that you need to think about your Ki bar, 2 things really, is that you can recover some of your Ki with a successful, it's called a Ki pulse. And this is just a timed press of R1 after you've done a series of moves which deplete it. You'll see that a section of the bar is brighter than the rest. Mm-hmm. And if you wait for that to fill up, and actually on your character in the real world, away from the bar, there will be sort of an arrangement of Ki around your body. There's sort of a graphical effect. Just tap it at the right time and that will fill back up again.
Easy.
You get into a rhythm of doing it where it does become slightly easier. I think in the discussions that the player community had around the first Nioh, it definitely helps. It wasn't as crucial. Nioh 2, it is crucial.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that which we'll come on to quite soon. The other thing is that when you're in combat with enemies, whether they're humans or yokai, which is a form of demon, they have Ki as well. And depleting that, it might be that they're blocking everything and they're very tough. You might think, well, this is fairly hopeless. I'm not doing any damage. Actually, a lot of it is because you have to be quite strategic. You have to fight them in such a way that so maybe tempt them to come on with attacks or make them block, get their Ki bar depleted, and then you can do a special attack on them, which does lots of damage. So just think about your combat encounters as jewels of Ki.
I see. Is it comparable, would you say, to Sekiro's sort of posture system?
Yeah, similar sort of similar ideal. I think that it's much more focused on that in Sekiro, but yeah, it's not a bad comparison. Number 3, we're going to talk about stances, and this is where I think some people can become intimidated in Nioh. That there are 3 stances that you can do, or 4 if you count putting your sword away, which is one of the.
That's the not fighting stance.
Exactly, and these are just low, middle, and high, and the thing to bear in mind
like
is,
in Tekken.
It is like in Tekken, yeah. And this will switch up your whole look, and so it's quite visually easy to see which stance you're in. Depending on the weapon you're using, you will stand in a different way and hold your weapon in a different way, whether you are low, middle, or high. It's very easy to switch between them. You hold R1, and you press either X, square, or triangle. So it corresponds to the height on the button pad. The game is very responsive because it wants you to shift between them, sometimes even between individual attacks, which is a very advanced technique.
Okay.
But basically what you need to know is that low makes you very agile. You lose less ki when you're moving. You can dodge attacks. You have a bigger kind of invulnerability window when you're using dodge.
Right.
Your attacks will do less damage, but they're faster, so they're more likely to break through. So if you're trying to get someone's ki down, that's a good way of you're attacking them. You're not really doing damage with your attacks, but you're waiting for that big opening.
Right.
Middle is balanced and a good place to start when you're getting familiar. And high stance is high damage, high risk. You're going to be much slower.
Right.
It's like using a powerful weapon, kind of.
So it's like holding your sword above your head, almost.
Yeah.
So you're leaving yourself open for attack, but
you move. Yeah, and you move slower.
Right.
And each of them have different moves which are specific to those stances. So I think at the beginning of the game, again, you'll be in middle stance probably, and you'll be just getting to grips with things. Don't stress about it too much. But if you're struggling, then just perhaps try low. I wouldn't say go high. And to be honest, I Platinum Nioh 1 and I didn't really find a situation which I really needed to use high. I used low a lot of the time and depleted people's ki, but just have a little play around and see if that helps you.
see what works for you.
See what works for you. Now we're going to go on to number 4, which is the Yokai realm.
Okay.
So
the bad place, I'm guessing.
It is, yeah, we could call it the bad place. So the Yokai realm in the first game was just, and this is the same here too, Yokai enemies would spawn small grey puddles, and within that your ki would regenerate slower than normal, and it just is not very nice to be in there. You can get rid of them with a successful ki pulse. The quickest way to do that is to just press tap square, just do the quickest, most basic move you can, not to try and attack anyone, and then tap R1 to, because you don't have to recover loads of ki, just any at all, and that will dispel the effects of the Yokai realm. Now in Nioh 2, because the Yokai in general are a much bigger factor in the game, there is a thing called the Dark Realm, which is whole parts of the level will go red and dark and bad.
Inside the Yokai realm, there's an even darker realm.
Well, there's think of the grey puddles, which you can hopefully see on screen now. They're spawned by enemies anywhere at all. You cannot mistake the Dark Realm. The entire filter goes up across the whole screen, the whole level changes.
Right.
You have ki regeneration issues again. Basically, you have to be very careful. You can't just dodge around because then you'll be kind of very open and vulnerable. And sometimes this happens, there'll be like a room, which is Dark Realm. Because the yokai are just particularly strong in there. Sometimes you can ring a bell to dispel it. Sometimes you have to kill a particular enemy. And probably the most challenging one is that some bosses will just have a phase of attack, which is, hey, now for the next minute, we're in the Dark Realm. And you just have to
survive.
Try and survive. Think of it as, like sometimes bosses have different phases or stages anyway. You're going to have to moderate your attacks and how you behave within that phase if you want to survive, which I'm assuming you do. I'm going to move on to loot now, which is, again, it's quite basic. Number 5, loot. It can become quite overwhelming. You pick up, every enemy drops something, and it can seem like there's a lot to do. But basically, my advice is, especially at the beginning, just pick everything up. Because when you go to a shrine, which is similar to any resting place in a kind of a masocore, an action RPG, like a bonfire, you can make an offering of anything you don't want. So you can go through your equipment and just go bang, 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 and just get rid of it all. It will give you Amrita, which is like the currency that you need in the game, and sometimes it will give you extra, just small items, buffs and health potions and those sorts of things. And also, just regularly, just check that because you're picking up stuff all the time, especially at the beginning, quite often the stuff that you get will be better than the stuff that you have.
Right.
So especially around the first level, I think that I got just on that first level, which I found quite a steep difficulty curve this time. By powering up my weapons, it made things much, much easier. Just keep a lookout. Don't change your weapon. Don't be like, hey, I've gone for because you think you have to be quite careful. So if you've gone for hatchets and then it's like, oh, picked up a really nice massive sword, that's not going to be good for your character build or for your future. You try to replace like for like, but just keep an eye out for that kind of thing.
Keep an open mind.
Exactly, and also if you're putting on better items of armor, just take a look at how much it weighs. The weight versus defense rating. There's tons of other stats to pay attention to, but basically don't make yourself super heavy because then you'll be moving.
I always like a light armor build.
I was a shinobi.
If you don't get hit, doesn't matter how strong your armor is.
No.
Keep yourself quick.
That's the ninja spirit, Rob.
Yeah.
You and me. We're going to move along.
Another way of not getting hit is giving up.
Right, or just not doing it in the first place. Just watching somebody else play. That's the other way you can do it. Where am I going to move on to now? Companions. So this is number 6, companions. So this is new for Nioh 2. In the previous game, there was a co-op mode. There were a few different ways where you could either play with a specific friend, or you could drop into a random person's game, or you could go and try to summon someone from a shrine in a level that you were particularly struggling with. That was playing with other people, obviously. There was also a system in the last game called Revenant Graves, where you could summon the ghosts of other players, and you would fight their build effectively, and from that you could get it was a good way of grabbing some loot.
Right.
In this one, there's now benevolent graves, and they're blue, so they are dotted around. I think there's a particular consumable that you can consume to leave your grave, and obviously if you leave it somewhere where people are going to want a lot of summons, then you go back, and sometimes you're rewarded when your benevolent ghost is off there helping somebody else.
I'd love the name benevolent grave.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful,
not good
oxymoron.
Benevolent. And this really, really, really helps a great deal. You use the consumable Ashoka Cup, same as last time, to summon people. You can farm these by fighting people in non-benevolent graves. So like kill people from the red graves, you get to summon the blue graves. Those people help you. There's no waiting around for like a potential co-op partner or anything like that. If you're playing at night time, it's just another mechanic to kind of help you. And again, it was only when I summoned somebody from a benevolent grave that I was able to get started really in the game and defeat that first level.
So red, kill, blue, summon.
Exactly. And they're your friends. So that's just a new sort of helping mechanic. Now I want to talk about, there are 3 things left for us to talk about. The first one is Guardian Spirit, which was a big factor in the last game.
Yes, so I remember this.
You could pick up different Guardian Spirits, and you would accumulate. You'd have an Amrita gauge in the top left of the screen. It's basically like in God of War or lots of action games. Kill people, fill up a gauge, go into like a super mode for a while. And the same basic principle applies here. That super mode previously was called Living Weapon. Now, because your character is kind of imbued with the powers of a yokai themselves, is called Yokai Shift. And what you will transform. This is when, if you've seen in the trailers, when you transform into a big kind of demon, this is it now. It's the new version of the living weapon.
Right.
It otherwise acts in a fairly similar way. Whatever guardian spirit you have equipped, because you can kind of equip them like weapons, and you can collect them as you go through the game, will have a series of passive buffs. So it might help you to do, like drop rates or defense against certain elements or those sorts of things. But the main visual thing is that it will, when you do go into your super mode, it will change the way that you look and the attacks that you can do.
Would you recommend shifting into that mode while in the Dark Realm?
Yes,
to offset the negative effects of that.
Absolutely, because and it is worth bearing in mind in general that yokai powers and attacks are particularly strong against yokai, and sometimes particularly strong in the Dark Realm as well.
Excellent. I feel proud of myself.
And more on that, we're moving on to number 8 now. Yokai powers can also be used when you're not using that big shift mode. When you're not using yokai shift, there is an extra bar. So there's health, there's ki, there's another bar beneath that, and that will tell you how much kind of yokai power you have to use. Basically, you kill demons in the game, you get their soul core. They leave a bit of their soul behind.
I see.
You take that to a shrine, you can attune it, and it slots into one of your guardian spirits, and then you can use one of the attacks of that demon. So basically, what it boils down to is that once you've been through the game and you've collected a bunch of them and you've attuned them and equipped them all, when you're walking around in Nioh 2, you get at your disposal 3 different sorts of yokai attacks at any given time. So as long as you've got power in that gauge, R2 and either X, square or triangle, and you will do one of these moves. And
right.
they can be very effective. Some are effective against particular enemies, so if you're getting stuck, experiment. Some of them are ranged, some of them are melee.
So it's like elemental weaknesses in a sense.
Yep. Yeah. Or just effective because you don't have to get close to someone who is very powerful,
right.
Close up. And the other thing you can do, you notice I didn't talk about circle there, is because R2 and circle is what's called a burst counter, which is like when you're fighting a yokai, a red flare kind of comes across in their animation, and that's a signal that they're about to do one of their powerful moves. And if you burst counter just as they're doing it and you're close enough, you will interrupt them and it will disrupt their ki significantly.
Sounds like one of these classic action game risk reward things. If you time it wrong, you're so close to their powerful attack that you're just going to get destroyed.
Although weirdly, being slightly too far away is a thing which keeps catching me, because I would activate it, but I won't come into contact with them. And then they just do their attack. Right. So that can be bad too. But you're right, in as much as it is one of the mechanics where the game is going to make you learn how to use it. If you don't, you're going to be in for a bad time. If you don't want to use burst counter, there isn't really
die or learn.
Exactly. There's not like a big consumable cost to it. You have to, but you have to get good at using it. Which leads us to, lastly, skills. Separately from stats, there are layers and layers and layers to the abilities here. Obviously, we've talked about, bumping up different stats, using different weapons, different guardian spirits, different yokai powers. There's a lot going on, and on top of that, there is also skills. Don't get overwhelmed. There is a screen which I'm showing now, which might make people, as it did when I first loaded the game, go, because it can look overwhelming. It's an enormous screen of like a kind of a web of different abilities, and there's lots of these screens. It's not just one screen.
Right.
There's like pages and pages of it. The best way to think about this is that there are 4 main categories of skills. Samurai, which is just fighting.
Yep.
Shiftling, which is to do with your yokai powers, and actually some of them are things which can help you when you're in the dark realm. There's Onmyo, which is magic, and that basically allows you to produce consumables which you can put into your items menu, which can slow people down, or they can do like different elemental attacks. And then there's Ninja, which is kind of a more practical version of the same thing. So it's very like the magic, enables you to a couple of skills and then also make consumables. So just worry about those 4. And then around the outside of the main screen, it's just that there are also skills for every individual weapon. Now, unless you want to become an absolute completist and master every weapon in the game, just worry about the ones you've got at the beginning. They are crucial and they are complicated. It's the thing I've written down about skills. These can make a really, really big difference to your success, even early on in the game.
Okay. And
they are worth engaging with, even though they're complicated. Yes. So there, skills. That is number 9. Do you feel prepped? Do you feel ready now, Rob?
I do. I mean, yeah. Think about what weapons I want.
Yeah.
Think about what skills go with those weapons.
Exactly.
Don't get hit. Change my stance.
Yep.
Persevere.
Recover your ki.
Recover my ki.
And
yeah.
And basically all your demon powers.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to be good at Nioh too. I really wanted to be good at Nioh, as I do with all of these games. But I'm so bad at persevering when I die.
Right. Well, I hopefully.
If only I was a completely different person.
Exactly. Well, they're called masocore games for a reason. I think that you have to absorb a certain amount of like failure and punishment.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
But then the other thing is, there is already, because of the trials and the betas which have existed, there's a brilliant community for support on these things, and they are generally really, really friendly on Reddit and other places, and they are looking at best builds, beginners guides. There's loads of support out there, which is a really nice. You do have to commit, I think, to this type of game, but I think that it can also be extremely rewarding. So there you go. Those are 9 tips for beginners. How not to die in Nioh 2, basically. I hope you've enjoyed this and it's been useful to you. Leave a comment, give us a like, please, and subscribe to the channel if you don't already. We will see you again soon.
For the players.